The word fantastic is one of those weird words that has a double meaning. So if I call you fantastic, that usually means you're pretty okay, you're better than okay, you're way better than okay. But the double meaning is it's remote from reality. It's nonsensical. So in that spirit, I read this fantastic article about Joy Reid of MSNBC in the New York Times today. We're going to get to that in a minute. But while I was, I knew as soon as I read the first couple paragraphs, I said, oh yeah, we got to do something about the denial, deceit, and delusion in this fantastic article. So while I was getting ready to do this video, I thought, okay, I'll turn the TV on to see if, no, you know what? I wasn't even doing that, come to think of it. I just turned the TV on. There was Joy. Her show, she has a TV show on. It was on Sunday morning. I think I was looking for golf. So there's Joy. And she's talking with a writer from Time magazine about the Black Panther movie coming out later on this week. And they both agree this is the greatest movie ever made in the history of the world. It's going to change the world. It's going to change everything for black people. I didn't really understand why. I couldn't understand why it's going to change everything. And well, it's one of two reasons. One, it's because finally we're going to tell the truth about Wakanda and how Africa is really a secret, one big secret country with lots of spaceships and lots of cool buildings. But the Africans have managed to keep it a secret up until now. Or two, the other thing I guess everybody's happy about is they want to show people what Africa would be like had not big bad white people gone there and messed everything up. Either way, they were both happy that this movie's being made because it's about time somebody made a movie about black people in Hollywood.
Tell me something. What do you know about Wakanda?
It's a third world country. Textiles, shepherds, cool outfits.
All front. Explorers have searched for it. Called it El Dorado. They looked for it in...
See, I guess that doesn't count the other 30 or 40 or 50 movies made in the last couple of years. You know, Django Unchained, 12 Years a Slave, etc., etc., etc. Lots and lots of black TV shows. I even think there's some black music out there. Black entertainment television, anyone. Anyway, Joy and her buddy from Time magazine were overjoyed. Finally, black people were going to get a chance to make a movie and to be in a movie.
I can see you.
And she said anybody who didn't like the movie, they were pretty much a hater, because that's what white people do here. So I learned a little bit about Joy from reading this article in the New York Times we're going to get to in a minute. But one of the first things you learn is Joy's parents came from Ghana in Africa. And so her parents were immigrants. So somehow they got here before Joy was able to figure out and tell them what a lousy, terrible place America is, where all people do is sit around and think of ways to mess with black people, because everybody knows, as Joy knows, which is what we hear on her show every single day, black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. That's her thing. Let's get to that New York Times article, because that's even more fantastic than her normal show is. How Joy Reid of MSNBC became a heroine of the resistance. The daughter of immigrants, she spars fiercely with supporters of President Trump, both on the air and in the Twitter ether. Okay, so we've already named her two big accomplishments. One, she does stuff with Trump on the air on her show, and she's pretty active in Twitter. Yay! So the story starts off by saying how she had a black conservative minister on her show, and she didn't like what the pastor was saying, so she cut him off. So that's supposed to be like unusual, right? That's what they do. That's what liberals do. They don't engage. They try to shut you down. How many times have we seen that happen to good old Colin on YouTube? They shut you down or call you a little name, hoping that, like in third grade, if you call somebody a name, you can get them to go crying into the corner, and then you won't have to deal with them anymore. That's all. I mean, that's her thing. She's not any different than any other host or hostess out there. What was that on the cover of the Vanity Fair, Hollywood Reporter? They had a picture of 10 talk show hosts. From Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy and down to Trevor Noah, whatever his name is. I mean, every single one of these guys is basically identical in their political approach, and their shows now are very political. They're identical. They just come up and make fun not just of Trump, but of Trump supporters / white people. Yeah, it's very funny. Anyway, so it tells the New York Times begins by telling the triumphant story of Joy kicking off a black conservative off the air, because everybody knows on MSNBC there are too many black conservatives on the air. Ooh, here she wrote a book on politics and race called Fracture: Barack Obama, the Clintons, and the Racial Divide. And it was called Kirkus Reviews. I think that's kind of a publishing industry outlet. Said it was provocative and well argued. Okay, yeah. Did anybody actually buy that book? Did anybody read it? So if you're coming out with your best shot, you're going to give me a publisher review. You're not going to give me some big hotshot columnist saying, "Oh yeah, Joy Reid has really changed the discussion on race." Yeah. Or did Joy just get in there and repeat what everybody already said, which is all part of the biggest lie of our generation? The correct answer is number 2. So, okay, so the New York Times did the best they could to establish her as a person worthy of a profile. Then it's like, okay, let's tell you the inside story, how she is a heroine of the resistance to Donald Trump. Her forceful questioning style. No, she doesn't have a forceful questioning style, because there are very rarely people on her show who disagree with her. She has a fawning style, because most of the people on her show are just on there to kiss her butt. That is it. Her morning show on Saturday averages nearly 1 million weekly viewers. That's when you say 1 million weekly viewers for a daily show, I don't know. That's a weird way of putting it, which makes me think there's something weird about that. And then she goes to remind everybody that her main mission in life is to tell people the truth about Trump, how he's a really, 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 really terrible person, and how the Russians really put him in there, and why can't you bad people figure that out? She was born in Brooklyn, raised in Denver. Mother is from Guyana. Father went back to Congo, and when she was at a young age, and that's where they said she went to Harvard. Not much on that, but she went to Harvard. How did Joy Reid get into Harvard? Any observations? Anybody? Probably the same way Barack Obama and Michelle Obama got into the Ivy League. Heavy doses of affirmative action. Yeah, Joy, you have a chance to prove me wrong by showing me something in your career other than getting a job where you excelled. Well, she did work at this is a weird career path for a Harvard grad. She moved to Miami to write for local television morning show. She was a fixture among South Florida lawmakers. She was involved for minority outreach for voter education, and she blogged. And she met a disc jockey who hired her to produce a talk radio show for listeners in the black community. "We had Lou Dobbs and Marco Rubio on our show," said Mr. Thomas. "She loved to debate." 2011, Joy Reid was named managing editor of The Griot, a news and analysis website aimed at African-American audience. Yeah, The Griot, basically, I think that was started by the Washington Post. I think they kind of or was that an NBC? I forget. There's The Griot, The Root. There's no difference between the two. Why do I care? Why do you care who owned which one or the other? Whatever it was, that's the kind of website where it's not breaking any stories. It's not breaking any news. People are kind of changes hands a lot. People are trying to get rid of it. So, Joy, what'd you do at the Griot? Did you make a difference there? Did you make it a major website, or did you just go in there and kind of bide your time around the coffee shop, hoping something would happen by accident? Oh, Joy got her big break in 2012 when Whitney Houston died. And when Whitney Houston died, who else would you call except Ms. Joy Reid? Blah, blah, blah. And she got hired by MSNBC to do the Reid report, which got canceled because of bad ratings. Many of her stories focus on race. Okay, here's my favorite. Here comes my favorite part here. In 2015, she went to Mississippi to investigate the death of a man hanging from a tree, suspended by a bedsheet, which some people said could have been a lynching. Quote, I literally have never had an experience where I felt almost like I was waking through a haunting. You could just feel the ghosts of Mississippi past everywhere you went. Okay, this lynching story was like virtually every other lynching story we've seen in this country for a few decades. It was a hoax. Never happened. Joy went down there and did a big lynching story, basically telling us who the guy was. Oh yeah, he was a killer. The guy who killed himself, he was a killer. Killed a white kid about 25 years before. Came back from a casino. They found him hung. By this time, everybody in the neighborhood knew the drill. Oh yeah, he killed himself. This is Jackson, Mississippi, right? Rocks and breeks and bottles. 85% black. Yeah, white people are stalking through Jackson, Mississippi, killing losers from casinos. So she went down there and basically did a story reminding everybody of the long, sordid history of people getting lynched in the South, how it still happens all the time, as early as late as like 10 minutes ago. And besides, we don't have any evidence it wasn't a lynching. Yeah, we don't have any evidence that it was a bunch of space aliens came down and hung the guy up by a bed sheet either. That's not really how you play the journalistic game here, Joyce. Sorry, called her Joyce. You either have a story or you don't. If you want to start speculating as to how this story could have turned out, fine, but there are a million different ways to speculate. My theory of space aliens is just as credible as your theory of it was a lynching. A few months later, Ms. Reid investigated why black churches were being burned down in southern states, visiting a church in South Carolina that was across the street from a dark forest. Oh my God. Wait to hear how this turns out. You could almost transport yourself back to the 19th century and see enslaved people running, you know? Everything about it had this omnipresent sort of pallor that I think America doesn't want to deal with. The only thing we don't want to deal with, Joy, is the role that your relatives had in selling slaves to slave owners that came here. Oh yeah, that story, we did a lot on this. I think I covered this in Don't Make the Black Kids Angry too. The black churches were being burned in the South. Yeah, this story from a couple of years ago, it was exactly the same story as when Bill Clinton did the same thing. He sent like dozens and dozens of FBI agents into the South because black churches were burning. Came back a year, it was like a big deal. Oh, the black churches are burning. The white racists are at it again. A year later, they came up and said, oh yeah, that didn't really happen. It was just it was either black people doing it, or it was just an old building that burned down because it wasn't up to code. And that's exactly what happened with the 7 or 8 churches that Joy went down to investigate. But she did the same thing. It's like, wow, people burn black churches around here all the time, as recently as 10 minutes ago. So they had to be burned by white people, right? No. If anyone was set by humans' hands, it was set by black people. The rest were they were crappy buildings, crappy electricity. One was destroyed by lightning. Other ones were burnt. Black people were burning the churches and hoping white people would get burned. We don't have any evidence that the lightning wasn't created by some white people running from Wakanda, do we? I mean, this is it. This is it. This is like the big coronation of the New York Times. She worked on 2 stories so far that we know of, and both of them were just big fat busts. Okay, now, I've worked with a lot of politicians in my life. I've known a lot of them in a lot of different ways. And, one of their favorite, a lot of times they're called upon to say something nice about somebody that either they don't know or they don't like that much. Maybe at a banquet, maybe at a funeral, maybe at a fundraiser. And the classic line, when you're in a position where you have to do that, the classic line people use is, yes, I've known a lot of reporters in my life, and Joy Reid is certainly one of them. So they go to Joy Reid's boss, the guy who hired her at MSNBC, Phil Griffin, and what does he say? Joy went to 10 states in 8 months. I think it was good for her, said Phil Griffin. I tried to explain that to her. She went to 10 states in 8 months. Okay, help me out here. What did that mean? I mean, is there some kind of ban on travel for black people in America that only Joy Reid is aware of? 10 states in 8 months? You get on the Amtrak, you can do 10 states in one afternoon. 10. Oh, man. Then then a little bit later, she took over from our favorite person, Melissa Harris Perry. We all remember Melissa Harris Perry, the one who said that black women don't report rape and domestic violence because, well, we all know what happens when white cops come in and arrest black men. They brutalize them and do bad things to them all the time. Let me see. So the rest of the article goes on to remind everybody that Joy, when she's not bashing white people in general, she's bashing men in general. And, well, that's all good. Now she's unhappy about people living in a bubble and only taking their views from their own ideologically connected anchors. That's like the pot calling the kettle. No, I don't think I'll go there. Anyway, so there's some normal Trump stuff. Yeah, Trump's a bad person. Trump's a bad person. Trump's a bad person. And she does a lot of tweeting. Wow, imagine that. People tweet. Do people really tweet? Do they let black people tweet in this country? Wow. Apparently, Joy was the first one to ever tweet as a black person in America. It's true. Look it up. To the New York Times credit, they mentioned that she did a story recently with a conservative reporter, David French, whose work I'm familiar with. And, she tweeted about one of the stories by characterizing it thusly, quote, "Don't worry, it will only kill Democrats and minorities." Joy apologized, had to admit, no, she had not read the article, but she did read stuff from people who read the article. Everybody's human. We're all guilty of skimming the headlines. And then, back in the mid-20s, she outed former Florida Governor Charlie Crist, whom she did not like when he was a Republican. She outed him, said he was a closeted gay dude, married to a woman that was just a big sham, a political sham for political purposes. She apologized to him, and now that he's a Democrat, she's feeling very warmly to him because I actually like Charlie Crist. He's such a lovely guy.
About Wakanda.
But in today's polarized political climate, everything is fodder for critics and opponents. Then she goes on to keep talking about how, Trump's a bad person, and anybody that can't see that is a bad person, and anybody who can't see everything that I say in this article is a bad person, and chances are, if you're reading this on some level, you're a bad person. I mean, that's how Joy Reid rolls. That's her whole career. Okay, so she's on MSNBC. She has an audience. Good for her. She's on the weekends for an hour. She fills in for Rachel Maddow. Yay! And that's it. I mean, that's it. What are we going to do now? Notify the Nobel Prize Committee? This is a person with no reporting experience. I mean, she just had gone on to one job after another. And when you look behind her and say, hey, what did you do to make a difference there? There's never an answer other than, well, Joy Reid was here and she went to Harvard. How did she get into Harvard? Well, I don't really know, but she must have had something going on. Maybe she just had a spot of bad luck here.
To be a king.
I mean, this is just one more signpost on the road to insanity, on the road of insanity that we see every day. The New York Times feels compelled to elevate Joy Reid into some kind of stratosphere of political discourse for reasons they're not even aware of, other than that she's black. And she has a TV show. And she tweets. And she screws up stories. That's it. Did she ever win any awards for the writing she did when she was in Miami? How about her radio show? Did Deborah ever get any national recognition for doing anything except getting on there and talking about how black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere? That explains everything. I mean, anything ever happen because of that? Did anything ever happen because she was just another person spreading the greatest lie of our generation, the hoax of black victimization? No. I mean, if you look at her clips from 2016, she's just always in the middle of the pack. And it's a bad pack to be in because it's a smug, arrogant, useless pack. You know, the pack of people that are constantly just repeating conventional wisdom. That in 2016 with the Trump campaign, we finally saw how wrong they were every single day. Yeah, that's Joy Reid. Let's put that in the headline. Joy Reid. Not really outstanding, even in a pack of smug, useless know-nothings. Subheadline. But at least she doesn't make the black kids angry.